Kevin Elizabeth, a wedding photographer based in San Diego. Today's video is going to be about everything you need to know if you are having a wedding where the weather is going to be really hot or really cold. As somebody who particularly hates the heat and does not like to sweat because it makes me a little bit cranky, unless I'm working, in which case I have to have a smiling face on, I specifically chose our wedding to be in April because, especially with my dress, with it being a long sleeve, I knew that I did not want to sweat, at least not until I got onto the dance floor. The last thing I wanted to feel on my wedding day was heat. And I mention this because I'll have a lot of brides get married in the summer and then they're really surprised when it's hot. And I'm like, did you not know like that San Diego is hot in these months? Or like, of course, Texas is gonna be hot in the summer. This is a thing that happens every year. So don't be surprised if you choose an August wedding in Alabama and it's really hot and humid. So just take in mind the weather when you're planning your wedding. Don't forget about it, because I swear, like, so many of my brides are like, oh my God, I can't believe it's so hot today. I'm like, it's the middle of summer. Like, of course it's hot. And then the same thing will go for winter, but I find it's more like prominent with the heat. But just know ahead of time when you're planning your wedding, and maybe by the time you're watching this, it's too late, and that's why you're watching this, because you want to know what to know. But if I've caught you before you've set your date, if you really don't want to be hot, do not plan your wedding in a notoriously hot month. Same thing goes for cold. So I'm going to start with the hot weddings first. The first thing that you need to know is that the later in the day, it's going to be a little bit warmer, and then of course it's going to cool down as the sun sets. Now the sun itself is probably going to be the most searing around noon to maybe about 2 p.m. That's when you're going to start getting really hot. So I would definitely recommend having your ceremony start as late as possible, probably about an hour and a half before sunset. That's going to be probably your best bet for having the coolest ceremony, because during hot ceremonies, what happens is all of the guests are sitting there really hot in wedding attire, and sometimes you can give them fans like this one right here. So guests will just be cooling themselves off like the whole time, or shielding the sun out of their eyes. So that's something that you can give them to deal with the heat. If you do know it's going to be hot, go ahead and do that. And then for your reception, if you're having it indoors, make sure the AC feels really great, like a nice relief from the heat. You don't want to freeze everybody out, but you do want to make sure that it feels nice. I have been to a couple of wedding receptions where it seemed like there was no AC inside of the ballroom. And let me tell you, every guest did not want to be on the dance floor because it was so hot just sitting. So make sure you have these discussions with your venues. If you are having an outdoor reception, as the evening gets later and later, it will get cooler and cooler. You're not going to need any heaters, which is great, so you won't have to rinse anything extra. I'll talk about that for cold weddings in just a bit. But for hot weddings, I'm going to say that it would be your best choice to at least find a wedding gown that's not massive. The bigger the wedding gown is, the more the layers, the hotter it's going to be. Some of the biggest wedding gowns I have ever seen in my life have been worn by middle of summer brides, and they've just been dripping sweat the whole time. They'd probably still be a little hot anyway, but the bigger your dress, the worse it's gonna be. So if you don't wanna be sweaty, then I would choose the thinnest gown possible. Of course, you want it to have a little bit of lining, but don't choose a big puffy ball gown if you don't want to be hot outside, because even if you're having your ceremony inside and your reception inside in the middle of summer, you might have all of your portraits outside. And depending on how hot it is, it might be more or less easy to deal with. But if it's going to be 90 degrees, any amount of time spent outside in wedding attire and full makeup is going to be hot no matter what you do. So I would say try to stick to some shady areas as much as possible for portraits. You still want to have nice light, and sometimes you can achieve that in shade if it's not too dark. I try to make sure my couples are comfortable, but that we also get the photos we need. And during hot weddings, it's okay to say, hey, can we run inside for a few minutes, cool off, then come back out? I don't mind that at all, because I'm really hot too, and I also want to make sure that my couple doesn't get super overheated, pass out, lose all of their energy, or ruin their makeup and hair and their outfits too soon. At the dance floor, that's a different story. But know that you can ask to take like a minute or two break to cool off, or maybe there's really cool portrait locations inside with beautiful lighting. It's kind of rare depending on your venue, but if there is, you can use that opportunity. Take portraits inside, hop outside, take a few, come back inside, take some more, and that's a great way to deal with it. Make sure that for your ceremony, especially if it's outdoors in the summer, that you have water stations, lemonade, something that guests can use to hydrate, and you need to make sure that you're hydrating throughout the day. So you can always ask a staff member or a vendor or a bridal party member or a family member, hey, can you go grab us some waters? Please don't feel bad about asking people to do that. You're on your feet all day talking to so many people. It's very draining, and in the heat, that is just amplified. You've got the extra sun and heat draining your energy, making you sweat a lot more. You need to stay hydrated so you do not faint or get really irritable or pass out or anything bad on your wedding day. This is a little bit more for like your planner and your dessert team, but if you are having a hot wedding and it is outside, make sure that people do not put the desserts outside until shortly before they're going to be consumed. Now, sometimes that is a bit of a bummer because it means your desserts might not be able to be shot with natural light, but hopefully your photographer can deal with that anyway. But it would be better to keep them in a cool environment until right before, maybe 15 minutes before. Have it set up, let the photographer know. I'm talking to the planner, not the bride, and then the photographer can shoot it, and then you can start your cake cutting or call people over to the dessert table. You don't want to let them be sweating. You don't want to let them get gross and nasty. So that is a really great thing to make sure that there is going to be space at your venue, that somebody is going to be handling receiving them, putting them in a cool place, and setting them out for consumption. Another thing you can do if you are having an outdoor ceremony or reception and you're worried about the heat, but you might also be worried just about the sun shining on people, is to have umbrellas, so really large umbrellas brought in, whether they're rented or they're from the venue, and you can place them along the sides of the ceremony seats so that at least the people who really want to be shaded can go get those seats early. And then the reception tables, you can have umbrellas around. Personally, they're not the prettiest things to photograph, so logistically, if you were to bring them in after the photographer has taken the photos, that would probably be your better situation if you're not wanting them cluttering up the photo and you want the space to look cleaner. So there is a way to be practical, but also to have the aesthetic of your photos that you want. If you don't care about them in the photos, that's totally fine. That's pretty much it for hot weddings. There's really not as much you can do for a hot wedding other than to make sure people are hydrated, have fans if they need them, and are cooled as much as possible. But when it comes to colder weddings, I think that there's a lot more of an option that you have. Now, typically colder weddings are happening when the sun is setting much earlier in the day, so a lot of your day is going to start earlier, especially if you want all to be in natural light. So it's going to be during the warmer parts of the day, so that is nice. But if you are having an outdoor reception and it's a little bit chilly, so for some of you, depending on where you live, you're like, what is an outdoor reception? So a lot of times in Southern California, we'll have outdoor receptions even in February or March, but what you have to have are heaters. You need to have enough heaters around the wedding, and there are certain heaters that are more effective than others. So make sure that you're talking with your planner or your rental company to ensure that you have everything heated as much as possible. Now, in addition to the heaters, because you should not skimp on guest comfort, otherwise they're probably going to go home very quickly and they're not going to have a lot of fun, perhaps you have some blankets available. You can buy bulk blankets really cheap, and one thing, we didn't end up doing this, but my planner had mentioned, one thing that's a really nice way to go about is to have, if they're wrapped, or wrap a couple of maybe the top 6 or so, and the ones in the bottom can stay wrapped. So if those don't get used, you can return them because they're still in their wrapping. So that's a really great tip, because you don't want to just have like 20 blankets around your house that you're not going to need. So if you can return some, that's great to do. Sometimes some weddings have done pashminas for the women's instead of blankets. So you can think of different things that you can do in addition to the heaters, because you should not skimp on the heaters, even though they might be pricey and they're stupid to purchase because you're like, that's not fun, it's not pretty at all. That's at least my thought process. You need to have them for guest comfort. For your wedding dress, one thing you can do is you can pretty much wear any kind of dress you want. But if you think you're going to be cold, have some sort of bolero or some sort of coat or jacket or something that you can put on that you like over your dress, maybe during your reception or in between photos, something that you can wear that you might not mind having photographed, that is comfortable and keeps you warm. Thankfully, a lot of times the men don't have to worry about this as much because they're usually in a suit or a tuxedo, typically with long sleeves, and they are just more warm in general. But for the women, it can be really nice, especially for your bridal party, to have everybody get matching, or not even matching, but just some sort of cohesive looking warmth thing, and you can totally incorporate it into the photos. Or if you don't want them in the photos, if they're not very cute, or you just want them out of the photos altogether, then you can just have everybody wear them, time for photos, take them off, ditch them off to the side, jump in for the photos, get back in them. That's a great thing to do, to have best of both worlds. So you're warm, but the warming devices are not in the photos. And another thing that could be really cute for a colder weather wedding is you guys could have some bonfires set up. Maybe people could make s'mores. That's always really cute. So you can always find creative things to do that not only make your guests warmer, but also make them have more fun, make it more interactive, giving them something to do. Maybe you have fire pits at the wedding and it's really cozy and you can have some cool seating around them. That's pretty much all that I have to say about hot and cold weddings. Again, know everything about the weather before you make your date, and then once you've set your date, plan accordingly. If you have any other questions about hot or cold weddings, I'm sure there's lots of great ideas that you can brainstorm to make sure that your guests feel really comfortable. And anyways, that is pretty much it, and I will see you guys then. Bye!